We spoke in our previous session about the prerequisites that are needed to approach esoteric texts. Esoteric texts are not approached like ordinary texts. They're not like textbooks or a novel or even a description. So we spoke about the need to really focus. And we also gave some examples of similar texts. I told you about that wonderful passage in the Rig Veda that talked about sages seeking in their hearts with wisdom found out the bond of the existent in the non-existent. And so I say, I think that's a beautiful passage. Sages seeking in their hearts with wisdom found out the bond of the existent in the non-existent. And perhaps that gives us a way of approaching, seeking in their hearts with wisdom. I think this is a beautiful way of approaching this material. And I'll also give you another example of a text that gives us some approach to this material. The famous Emerald Tablet of Hermes. Yesterday, with some of the other speakers, you heard of the term as above, so below. And this is the source of this phrase. Madame Blavatsky quotes it in Isis Unveiled, in fact. And I'll use the translation that appears in Isis Unveiled. What is below is like that which is above, and what is above is similar to that which is below, to accomplish the wonders of one thing. As all things were produced by the mediation of one being, so all things were produced from this one by adaptation. Its father is the sun, its mother is the moon. It is the cause of all perfection throughout the whole world. Its power is perfect if changed into earth. Separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, acting prudently and with judgment. Ascend with the greatest sagacity from the earth to heaven, and then descend again to earth, and unite together the power of things inferior and superior. Thus you will possess the light of the whole world, and all obscurity will fly away from you. This thing has more fortitude than fortitude itself, because it will overcome every subtle thing and penetrate every solid thing. By it the world was formed. So, when we approach the secret doctrine, this gives us a template for understanding the mechanism that it uses. So, what is below is like that which is above, and what is above is similar to. So just that word is, I think, very interesting. Is similar to, not is similar to that which is, what is above is similar to that which is below. As all things were produced by the mediation of one being, so all things were produced by this one by adaptation. It's really this little passage, Madame Blavatsky herself really, and other esotericists say that it represents the whole of Western esotericism in one particular passage. It was supposed to have been found on the dead body of Hermes. There are a number of different stories of its origin. It is not usually in the other Hermetic texts, the Corpus Hermeticum. It first appears in Arabic and then passes into Latin during the late Middle Ages and of course into English. It really is a wonderful study. Fortunately, we don't have time for it, but we did discuss it last year at the European School of Theosophy in Venice, and those of you who would like to have more on it, there is a DVD available called Unlocking Intuition, Hermes Trismegistus and the Function of Buddhi, and I believe the price is €8, so knowledge cheap at any price. But I want us now to really approach the secret doctrine, to look into it. Most lectures or presentations on this subject, you will hear what other people tell you what they think about this book. Numerous commentaries have been written on the secret doctrine, with people telling you, interpreting, because anytime somebody tells you something, there is an interpretation, there's a filter, there is something coming from my own particular insight into it. But I want us to approach it somewhat differently. In 2000, for the 175th anniversary, 125th anniversary of the Theosophical Society, we did a seminar in Naarden where we used the stanzas over a weekend and really meditated on them. And so I just want us to go through the first stanza in the Secret Doctrine. And I'll read the passage, I'll read each verse, and I'm not going to give you a commentary, because what I want you to do when I read the passage is I want you to see what comes to mind. What images come to mind? Observe the mind as you hear these things. Even those of you who may not know English, how does the sound, what response does just that sound give to you? So I'll read a passage, we'll just have a minute perhaps of silence and just observe what comes out. And then it would be nice if in turn you share your images. There is no right and wrong with this, there couldn't possibly be. And then perhaps we'll have some discussion also. So would you like that?
Sure. Yeah.
If you don't mind?
Very good.
So this is the very first stanza in the Secret Doctrine. This is how the book begins. The eternal parent, space, wrapped in her ever-invisible robes, had slumbered once again for 7 eternities. The eternal parent space, wrapped in her ever-invisible robes, had slumbered once again for 7 eternities. I see some of you have slumbered already during this period. Hopefully not for 7 eternities, though that 1 minute may have stretched. What did you feel? What did you get? What did you think? What came to mind? Yes.
Islam, but once again, that means there's something must have been there before.
Mm-hmm.
That's what came to mind.
Harold?
Well, it reminds me, the sentence itself is an immediate block to a lot of people, particularly for me in my experience, my own brother-in-law, who is a student, for example, of Wittgenstein, and he said immediately the whole thing is nonsense, and he turned off away from theosophy, and I can't get him to have a look at any other thing in theosophy because of that one sentence.
This particular sentence.
That one particular sentence. Oh yes, that one particular sentence, because he said, it's ridiculous, 7 eternities. How can you have 7 eternities? And it was no good at me explaining to him that the word eternity had itself been misunderstood and not treated properly. It just turns off straight away. And I thought I would mention that because that underlines your first statement that it is a special class of literature and you've got to approach it in a different way.
Hold on. Harold, and I would have you say to him that he really should read Wittgenstein, because I am a great fan of Wittgenstein also. And Wittgenstein's, you may not know, he was truly one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century. He studied under Bertrand Russell. In his early days, he wrote this remarkable thesis that influenced Western philosophy and then came back and refuted it. In his later years, he has a great text called On Certainty. It's a play on words also. On certainty could be also uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And Wittgenstein's whole idea goes back to a 19th century philosopher, Gottlieb Frege, who some of you may know. And a lot of Wittgenstein's philosophy is the thought process, the sentence process really gives you an insight into consciousness. So I don't think Wittgenstein himself would have looked at the sentence structure as an example of consciousness. So also, Wittgenstein taught at Cambridge, and he constantly told his students that philosophy couldn't be taught. And in fact, after a day of teaching, he would walk into the village and go see American movies, like a Betty Grable movie, because he thought all of this talking really doesn't give you the insight into the mechanism of mind. First, Gunnar?
There is a TV channel in Sweden, a series called The Great Philosophers, 17 programs, and one of them was about Wittgenstein. And in each program, a specialist is interviewed. And one of the specialists on Wittgenstein said that Wittgenstein was wrong in his statement that it is impossible to have an all-embracing theory. Mm. And this commentator said that I don't believe that was correct. And then he made some comments. So it's interesting to see that Wittgenstein is in such a state put away.
Well, the great thing about Wittgenstein is he constantly kept changing and adapting his ideas. If you look at the early period, he's actually, perhaps you can Google him, I'm sure there's a great entry in Wikipedia, but really came from a remarkable family in Vienna, was an architect, created this early thesis that really had a great impact on Western philosophy, then later came back, refuted that thesis, and then in his later years kept developing and questioning his own ideas. And in fact, I think his last notebooks, as I say, are called Uncertainty, and they're just very pithy statements. They're not very long examples and long tractate, but very simple statements. And in fact, he's somewhat similar to Krishnamurti, questioning. Imagine, what philosopher then goes back and questions their own ideas? Yes. Colin?
Oh, well, you're asking me what went through my mind. I thought what a great shame it was to mask the teaching in this language, which is similar to the sort of way in which language is used in the book of Revelation and the book of Daniel in the Bible, where it's a sort of apocryphal language which has a hidden meaning behind it. And if it's a hidden meaning, we would really like to have the hidden meaning. I mean, clearly the normal use of the word eternity is not meant here. The reader immediately wants to know. So instead of reading on into the secret doctrine further, bang, you're brought up against the buffer. You have to find out what the word eternity means in this context.
But she does use eternities, which is quite interesting. Yes, in the back.
What does that mean?
Exactly, that's what everybody says.
It produced an image I'll try to describe. It was, I had a feeling it was a mother in the position of reclining Buddha, and the garments to me were translucent, and I had a feeling of timelessness. So I don't know if accurate, but I definitely knew it was a mother. It was in the position of reclining Buddha with translucent garments, and I felt timelessness. That's the best I could do with the image.
David?
Yeah, the image that came to me for the first time after I've read that stanza so many times. So thank you for this exercise, Michael. It's very important to honor the stanzas themselves. But the image that came to me was one of warmth.
Huh.
It's first time because enwrapped in invisible garments, it is as if it's a cold winter evening and you see existence enwrapping itself with the compassion that is the result of the previous period of evolution.
Oh, very interesting. Did you find that 1 minute seemed to stretch for an eternity? That 1 minute of silence? No?
Certainly not 7.
Yes. Yes.
My image was of a cocoon.
Yes.
I think the interesting two concepts there of space and time, where we look at time, and obviously esoterically we look at duration.
Duration, very true.
And therefore the 7 eternities, an eternity is something which is bounded. So there's 7, as the universe, if you like, as we see it, as a bounded form that would last for a duration, therefore being an eternity in itself. So there'd be 7 eternities, but it's written in such a way that we're talking about something which is not in manifestation, but has that value of space and wrapping, and also time and duration.
And I think these stanzas somewhat function in almost a Zen way. It works through a paradox. It forces the mind, the brain, all these Zen sayings that are really, what the sound of one hand clapping and those things. It pushes the brain to function on a totally different level, because it's so alien to us. It's interesting that in her original stanza, which I've seen in the archives at Adyar, it was the eternal mother space wrapped in her ever, because you see, they say parent, but if you look at it closely, wrapped in her ever invisible robes. I suppose those Victorian gentlemen who were editing her thought to have the feminine principle as the mother really, when you had everything male, would have been just too much, so they had a compromise with the eternal parent space wrapped in her ever invisible. There are really only another 7 of these, so shall we continue? And as I say, just try to, don't analyze it, just see what comes to mind. What is that first impression? You know the old saying, first impressions count? What is the very first thing you get? Don't try to still the mind, just observe. Just observe what happens. And if your observation is the mind starts telling you, did I turn off the gas at home? No, don't block it. Let, as you know in analysis, let everything just come to the surface, but just observe the impression. So, 2, time was not, for it lay asleep in the infinite bosom of duration. time was not, for it lay asleep in the infinite bosom of duration.
I saw a babe in its mother's arms. Yeah.
Was it a mental image, or what? How did you perceive the image? It was not.
It was more a feeling
a feeling. That's
against,
So then the brain starts transcending just even a mental impression. Then you'll notice perhaps it's an impression or a feeling. It's not a visual perhaps, but an intuitional type thing. Anyone else? Yes, Ingrid.
The visual was darkness, but the feeling was utter peace.
What was that word?
utter peace.
Oh, peace.
Because?
Vibrations. Vibrations and sound.
Vibrations and sound. Yes? Over here? Yes. Yes?
Mine was complete emptiness, a total void of nothingness, peace, totality.
Number 3. Universal mind was not, for there were no ahi, celestial beings, to contain, hence to manifest it. Universal mind was not, for there were no ahi, celestial beings, to contain, hence to manifest it. Anything? David.
The feeling of a longing, to manifest.
Yes.
Just kind of an emptiness. It's hard when you say that they were not, or things were not, because what do you visualize were not? Emptiness.
Exactly. You know, I think if this was a made-up test, she would tell you. It would start off, but it starts off with this dramatic paradox. She starts telling you, like in the Upanishads or the Vedas, neti neti, not this, not that. When they speak about Atman, they don't say what Atman is, they say what it is not. It is not this, it is not that. Because then, how can you put a name on the nameless reality? Right? Yes, Flynn.
I've been meditating on this for many, many times. And when you read it again, I have this feeling that don't spoil it with words.
Yes. Yeah. What I find always gets in the way every time you read this is that it is beyond the reach of human thought and understanding.
Good point, yes. 4. The 7 ways to bliss, moksha or nirvana, were not. The great causes of misery, nidana and maya, were not. For there was no one to produce and get ensnared by them. The 7 ways to bliss, moksha or nirvana, were not. The great causes of misery, nirdana and maya, were not, for there was no one to produce and get ensnared by them. Yes, Colin.
I had a very strange sort of feeling of being let into a secret of what is to come, and the things that are going to happen, but not actually saying they're happening. A sort of prologue, really, a sort of prologue effect.
Good point. Anyone else? Yes.
As Colin was saying, it's almost like a sheet of paper before the emanation. It's putting these components together from a spiritual form. We haven't got to the point of actually putting a mark on the paper as an emanation, but it's giving this flavour, if you like, of how the components are coming together, enabling that to happen.
Anyone else?
Well, the bliss and what was it, suffering?
Bliss and misery, 7 ways to bliss, the great causes of misery were not.
It sounds like they don't exist without the person or the being that comes. So that it says something about misery, and it says something, I guess, about not being existential in themselves.
5. Darkness alone filled the boundless all, for Father, Mother, and Son were once more one, and the Son had not awakened yet for the new wheel and his pilgrimage thereon. Darkness alone filled the boundless all, for Father, Mother, and Son were once more one, and the Son had not awakened yet for the new wheel and his pilgrimage thereon. Yes.
It's interesting, the stanza before, I got a sense of darkness and of waiting. And now this one brings forth that image of darkness, and I get the sense of people coming to the stage, as if they're waiting to come on this stage and present.
6. The 7 sublime lords and the 7 truths had ceased to be, and the universe, the son of necessity, was immersed in parinishpana, absolute perfection, to be outbreathed by that which is and yet is not. Naught was. the seven sublime lords and the seven truths had ceased to be, and the universe, the son of necessity, was immersed in parinishpana, absolute perfection, to be outbreathed by that which is and yet is not. Naught was. Naught was. Those two words actually have a difficulty for non-English speakers, because N-A-U-G-H-T, naught, could actually have not just one meaning in English, as you know, but two meanings, meaning nichts was, right? Naught was, nothing was, or also, some of you may remember, a naught is another word for what?
Zero,
right?
that was nothing. Yeah.
For a non-English speaker, that would not perhaps translate, but so naught, the zero was. Is she telling us then the zero, which is a circle, wasn't, again, it's like stripping off different layers. Naught was. So she's saying nothing was, or the zero was, again.
But the zero would have a circumference,
That's
wouldn't
right.
it? So,
Yes, Colin.
Oh, these are some of the words that really excite me. I get a huge feeling of excitement inside when I hear these words, because there is the oblique reference to the unmanifest, awaiting to manifest. And, you know, I see the whole theosophical teaching in a nutshell in those words. And it really excites me. I feel it right inside.
Maybe I didn't understand it, but I thought it had something to do with saying something about after the existence of certain time of perfection. That's what it seemed to be.
As I say, there are no.
I don't know why, but
if your consciousness is giving you something, there are no rights or wrongs, of course, for you. You know, I'm sure other people can tell you what is right and wrong, or what is the correct answer, and I'm sure they will. But there really isn't. We just have two more to go. The causes of existence had been done away with. The visible that was and the invisible that is rested in eternal non-being, the one being. The causes of existence had been done away with. The visible that was and the invisible that is rested in eternal non-being, the one being. Yes?
It's just like telling us all about before the Bible, before the beginning, the Bereshit, telling us what it was before. That is the before feeling. That is what. That is my opinion.
And of course, in the West, it's all about in the beginning. We're never told what happened before the beginning. So our first, and of course linear time starts with the beginning, in the beginning. There's never anything in Scripture about before the beginning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Yes.
I think what's marvellous about that is it's talking about, obviously in Pralaya, we're also talking about the nothingness, but a full potential. It has everything within it, the paroma, the fullness. And it's been describing there through that, through the whole of the stanza, if you like, what the potential is. It's beginning to give an understanding of what, just saying the word potential, but what almost breaking it into those components before anything is ever emanated.
Mm. Yes, Colin.
I find the words awesome.
Awesome.
Awesome. Because they're doing what I don't think words can usually do. They're describing the indescribable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
We're almost there. Alone, the one form of existence stretched boundless, infinite, causeless, in dreamless sleep, and life pulsated unconscious in universal space, throughout that all presence which is sensed by the opened eye of the seer, Dhamma. Alone, the one form of existence stretched boundless, infinite, causeless, in dreamless sleep, and life pulsated unconscious in deepless, life pulsated unconscious in universal space, throughout that all presence which is sensed by the open eye of the seer. What you may notice with these, I've done these workshops for about a decade. I think the first one was actually done at the English Summer School in 2000. We've done them in the Netherlands and in the US. When we start out, it's very easy. There's a nice, everyone is looking forward to it, but as we progress, the image becomes more and more, it's a negation. It's an emptying process. Suddenly, you get something, then perhaps then nothing, or of course people start getting fidgety. There is a ninth one, but I'll just simply read it and then we'll just close with this, mainly because HPB being HPB has just put this. But where was the Dhamma, the seer, when the Alaya of the universe was in Paramartha and the great wheel was Anupadaka? She throws now all of these terms which you don't have a clue what they mean, right? Which in a sense is good. In the Chaldean oracles, they talk about the barbarous names of evocation. One of the things the Chaldean oracles says is, change not the nomina barbara, change not. There are all of these words that just have no sense to us, but yet it's sound, it's vibration. You know, in the Vedas, which are the oldest scriptures in India, the source of them, it's all about sound. It's all about the vibrationary power of sound. And earlier on, David mentioned about theurgy, this work of the gods, and as the theurgist said, the gods are not approached through language. The gods are not approached through even the hymns, because they are on their own level. These theurgists, the Neoplatonists, would approach them through sound. We have in the stanzas the famous Ayohu, the sound, color, incense. They use a means to trip the mind to approach this other reality. If you do get the book, you'll find that I've just included a very short passage of commentary in each. The book goes on endlessly, you'll find pages and pages upon one passage, but I'll just give you this last passage from it because I think it sums it up nicely. She says that esoteric philosophy teaches that everything lives and is conscious, but not that all life and consciousness are similar to those of human or even animal beings. Life we look upon as the one form of existence manifested in what is called matter, or as in man, what incorrectly separating them we name spirit, soul, and matter. Matter is the vehicle for the manifestation of soul on this plane of existence, and soul is the vehicle on a higher plane for the manifestation of spirit. And these three are a trinity synthesized by life, which pervades them all. So, matter being the vehicle of soul, mind, and then in turn, soul being the vehicle still of something higher, spirit, which is somewhat, you think of spirit, and spirit is somewhat, soul we can think of some sort of differentiation or limitation, but then spirit, then what is the boundary of spirit? What limits spirit? There's a quote that David gave in his handout this morning that reminded me that I should have done more homework. It's right on page 2, and it's from the SD, and it says that the first lesson taught in esoteric philosophy is that the incognizable cause does not put forth evolution, whether consciously or unconsciously, but only exhibits periodically different aspects of itself to the perception of finite minds. And I think if you were just to take this particular passage and use it as a basis of contemplation, it would be quite remarkable, because it really gives a tremendous shift in the way we see the whole approach to reality. As you know, with theosophy, we don't have a lot of practice, though meditation has crept in more and more in the Adyar society. We don't have a ritual or a practice or what they in the East would call a sadhana, some sort of, but we approach knowledge or understanding through study, through this idea. And if we can grasp this idea that the absolute, what she's telling you in that first stanza, she's really revealing to you your own absolute nature. This is what you really are, limitless, boundless, absolute. Human existence, the creation of the universe, multiple universes, is that wonderful line in the beginning of the book. The eternity of the pilgrim is like a wink in the eye of self-existence. The entire Manvantaras, creation of universes, solar systems, to the absolute is just a moment. As the Hermetic writings say, the thought made divine, the divine thought made manifest. One of the nicest images are, you've always seen sometimes those ponds or lakes where a bubble somehow rises out of it, iridescent, and then pops. That's really manifestation, just something coming out from this pool of water, which also is eternal matter. This wonderful iridescent thing that pops. I think it's really, really important to grasp this idea, because once you reprogram the brain to think in this way, you really, everything else then begins to fall into place. You really begin to see the world in a totally different way. Imagine if you lived your life realizing that you were not the form, the vehicle, the consciousness, but an eternal, boundless, immutable thing, right? All the time limitation don't really affect you. There is always that part of you that is untouched by the greatest sorrows you will ever have in this life, or even the greatest happiness. There is that eternal part that remains untouched. David gave the quote from the Gita, "With a portion of myself I create the universe." I would perhaps, that passage also has been a great debate on it. And yet I remain. I would not say I remain separate, yet I remain, right? Because once you have something separate, you have some sort of dualism right there. And our system, remember, is not a dualistic system. Something is not created out of nothing. But as she says, HPB constantly reminds us that nothing emanates from the absolute, right? As this quote, David's hands out, but only exhibits periodically different aspects of itself to then mind. So all of creation is a revelation, really, when you think of it, a revelation of itself. She says that this system is not emanationism, though there's emanations. It's not emanationism. Emanation is the system like, for instance, if you've seen a fountain in the winter that freezes, something transforming itself into something else, that's not it also. Something does not become something else. To our state in consciousness, it appears that way, that something is progressing, something is changing. But imagine all of eternity, all of this existence, the creation of the universe, it's more like a flower unfolding, right? That's a wonderful symbol. That lotus is a wonderful example. It's just an unfolding, or Mabel Collins had a little book on the sutras of Patanjali called The Transparent Jewel. And this is how she describes yoga. It's like seeing a beautiful jewel, and all you're doing is looking at different facets of this wonderful jewel, right? So we're almost at the close of our time. Any questions? Yes, Colin.
Well, can I just come in on this particular point that you just raised, Michael? Because as I understand it, she says the unmanifest is ever unmanifest. And the manifestation is after some mysterious duality has developed, whereby the unmanifest is still unmanifest, but there's still a part becomes available to show the aspects of itself you've just been talking about. I mean, you can't really put it into words, but there is this strange onset of duality somewhere, which leaves the manifest always, the unmanifest always unmanifest.
But I would just add as a coda to it, two words, to us.
To us.
To us,
yes,
right?
Yes.
You see, all of our studies, all of philosophy, even esotericism, we are going from here looking up to the divine. But I think the thing we need to do is to flip the consciousness, look at it from the divine, looking down to us. Technically, you can't achieve the divine. You can't, there are no processes. This is one of Krishnamurti's big things. If there was a means to attaining this, people would have discovered it millennium ago, you know. And what about the saints and all of those mystics who have this? What did they do? You know, there is no real, there are people who will tell you there are plenty of methods, but how many enlightened people are there truly in the world? So we have to sort of flip the script, as they say in America, and look at it from the divine. And in our next session, we are going to continue. Yes, Ingrid?
St. John described his experience as climbing a narrow staircase in a tower, and then he reached the light, and so that is how he experienced it.
Yes, and as I
being in touch with the divine.
the irony is that when we spend all this effort to attain this, then we are nothing, right? I'll just end with this lovely little quote that I came across. Unfortunately, I don't remember the source, but it says that as we progress on the spiritual path and awaken to the self, we become paradoxically more selfless. As we lessen our concern with our individual dramas and open more fully to the heartbeat of humanity, our individual lives become more dedicated to relieving the suffering of others. And I think that's really a wonderful little goal. So thank you for saving me having to speak for an hour and let me let you do the work now. You're not going to get away with it, and then we'll continue on. I think this so far has been a really great dynamic summer school we've had. European school. We've really had Indian summer school, yes. We've really had some great presenters, and really the great thing about the European school is it really challenges us. It really challenges us to think. Anything else you go, you'll sit there and you just purr like cats being stroked, because you just, oh yes, yes, I know this, yes, yes, how good, how nice, and so what, right? Unless there is that mechanism that helps you for transformation, then you're just the same as you left and you haven't gotten your money's worth. So to sum up sum up my past hour in 3 words from HPB, potentiality becomes potency. Right? So remember, you all have that divine potentiality, and it's up to you how you manifest that. The great thing about karma, reincarnation of all these, life puts you in the place where you can do the greatest good, right? One of the fantasies of the young is we're all going to become great actors on the world stage and solve problems and become a universal figure. But sometimes it's just exactly where life puts you that you actually can do the greatest good for life itself. So now go out and do good. Thank you.